So we should be live now. Might take a minute for it to come up. And you should be able to see it in the corner here that it says we're live.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So we should be, there we go. So I'm just gonna fix the video just really quickly. And I'll give people a second just to kind of come in. Let's see here. So hopefully, if you guys can let us know if the sound is okay, if you can hear us. Why don't we start, if we could, while I might hear me typing a little bit, I'll mute myself so it's not too loud. If you could start, Argos, just talking a little, introducing yourself a little bit for people who may not know you here, talk a little bit about your YouTube channel, a little bit about your background in like the TCG space, and maybe a little bit outside of it, whatever you feel like sharing about you as a person, just to get to know you a little bit. We can start there while I quickly fiddle with some stuff, and then we'll open it up to just like questions and a casual conversation.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. So yeah, so I'm Argos of Argos Anonymous, and lately I've been mostly covering Metazoo content, which has been a lot to cover because a lot of people either love or hate Metazoo right now. And a surprising number of people haven't heard about it yet. You'd be a little shocked if you're deep in the TCG space to see how many people at a convention have no idea what it is, but it's still new, it's still just a baby. So I got into TCGs a long time ago with third edition or revised Magic when I was a kid. And I just played Magic and collected Magic kind of, on and off forever since about 1994. And then I dabbled in other games like Spellfire or Rage, which was like an old werewolf game, that every now and then someone's actually heard of, or like Lord of the Rings or Five Rings. I mean, just a bunch of things on and off. More recently, like I touched Argent Saga for a little bit. And I started noticing, so many games come and go. After the late 90s, the market hasn't really been too receptive of anything new. And it seemed like a couple years ago that started to shift, where there was a body of people that were thirsty for something new. And a new thing would come and people would latch onto it. And then if it wasn't good enough, it would still die. But then if it was good enough, you started to see that it might make a lasting impression, get enough market share to survive, which is what we saw, I think, so far anyway, with something like Flesh and Blood. And which is what I believe, in my opinion, will happen with Metazoo, is you have this really receptive time where people want something new and they want something fresh. And you also have money pumping through the system and collectibles booming. And it's kind of like a fertile ground for something new. So suddenly something that had become a little stale for me in my life, or not stale, but had slowed down, became very interesting again. And I got into YouTube with Argent Saga, not because I actually had any particular aspiration, but because not very many people were doing it. And I wanted to provide the community with something to be entertaining and to help them out with deck tech videos and whatnot. And then Argent Saga fiddled out. Around the time I found Metazoo, and the beginning was really the same thing. There were a few people making videos. There was a big community or a small community that was growing quickly. And I just like the idea of providing entertainment and providing content for a small game that doesn't have a lot of options. Now, Metazoo is growing sort of beyond that small game. I mean, it is still a small game, but it certainly is growing in a way that I hadn't anticipated last March. And I guess I just made a conscious decision to grow with it and to just say yes to every opportunity that comes to me. And that is how this has, I guess, grown into a Patreon and soon to be a website and retail sales and bundles and, a growing YouTube and just so many things has just been from joining Metazoo, serving a community first, which people like, and then they want to tune in and see what you have to say, and then just saying yes to everything. So my finance background is mostly in stocks. My career is in medicine. And so I thought at some point I would actually have the resources to do some investing. And so I thought I should learn about it. So about 10 years ago, I started dabbling in stocks. And then for the last 5 or 6 years, I've done a lot more seriously. I mostly do index trading, some with like an algorithmic index trade of futures, which is a little technical. But then because my specialty is medicine, I focus on biopharmaceutical short-term trades. And I have found that because these companies are speculative and because they don't have earnings at the beginning of their life, these like smaller companies, that the market dynamics that those stocks follow, in my opinion, are similar to the market dynamics that you see in trading card games, which also don't have earnings, right? They're just kind of speculative supply and demand based things. And so I was able to apply a lot of what I learned about trading small to medium cap speculative stocks to working with financial markets and card games. And to me, that's been really helpful. And that's why I love it. And if it's more fun, as you said recently, cards are fun, man. It's a fun way to dabble in something that is an investment. It's fun. Yeah. And that's me. Yeah.
So I guess taking a step back for a second, just from, and, definitely, I think we'll have a super fun, conversation about finances and markets, and we can delve into sort of Metazoo and the prices and what sort of happened, and I think have, an interesting discussion. What do you like about Metazoo, just for yourself? Like, rather than speculating on like why other people like it or what other people are interested, I'm curious, just for yourself, what do you enjoy about it? What have you enjoyed about opening it, experiencing it so far? Maybe first just with the card game itself. And then if you want also to talk about like the community aspects or the other things, because all this stuff, it's not just about my enjoyment of Pokemon. It's also about my enjoyment of doing it with other people and collecting with other people and the community and the friendship. So it becomes, more than just that, but I'd love to hear sort of you're starting with just Metazoo, the product itself.
Yeah. Metazoo has a lot of mechanics that are similar to Magic the Gathering. It has some very specific differences, like the combat is a little bit different. Some of the turn sequences are a little bit different, but a lot of it is similar. So when you come from a background of playing Magic, it's pretty easy to pick up Metazoo. And so that was appealing to me. Like I didn't have to learn a totally different thing. But then it was, I mean, I like Magic. This isn't a diss against Magic, but when I describe Metazoo, I kind of say it's like playing Magic, but it's fun. And so, and Magic is fun too, but I just mean it's next level fun. It's like you're watching a Metazoo tournament. And this is what drew me in, is I was watching two people playing on Discord. And one guy dropped a Jersey Devil, and they were both very serious. They were like, it was a competitive match. They were trying to test what they thought were going to be meta decks for a Discord tournament that was coming up. And so one guy plays a card called Jersey Devil from Cryptid Nation. And when you play that card, you have to emit a blood-curdling scream or you take damage. And so these two very serious competitive players are sitting there. It's silent. They're like checking each other, checking numbers, playing cards, focus. And then one guy plays the card. He doesn't do anything. The other player kind of goes like this. Are you gonna? And the first guy goes, oh yeah. And I just could not laugh. And I thought, what is this game that just brings out these feelings of so much fun? And as I looked into it, then it just opened up a whole world of resonance and fun. It feels and looks like old school Pokemon in many ways and resonates that way. But then it's all the characters we know: Babe the Blue Ox, Bigfoot, Mothman, Chupacabra. You look at it and there's immediate resonance somewhere, and then the connection to real world places too. where you look at the card and it says, oh, this is from Loveland, Ohio. And then all the people in Ohio, in Loveland, Ohio go, that's my town. And in Wisconsin, everybody knows the Hodag. So now you have all these people in Wisconsin that go, hey, that's our Hodag. And it's no surprise then that it draws so many people in because it resonates so powerfully with so many people. And Mike knew it from the beginning that this was a huge strength and it wasn't a lack of IP per se, as long as they can make it their own. It was a powerful built-in resonance that just draws in the audiences. And so along with many other people, that is what I love about it, is that it resonates so powerfully with me and it plays like magic, similar to magic anyway. So, and you get to scream and make train noises every now and then if you want to.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm actually I'm a big game player, but I'm not a big TCG player, funny enough. I've played a little bit of Magic. I more play things like chess and poker and board games with friends and that type of thing, like weekly board games where we just get super competitive and feelings get hurt.
Feelings get hurt.
a number of nights. But so like the fourth wall instinctively feels like kind of strange and a little like like uncomfortable to me. But
some of it is.
Yeah, but I wonder if like I could get into it, or if I was like with the right group of people that I really enjoyed, if that would be like fun thing to do. I have no experience in that. So it's interesting that like I don't really know that much about the Metazoo, like what the plans are on the playability side in terms of how many, and you probably know a lot of this stuff, but just sort of like what tournaments are going to have that versus not have that, or how they're going to incorporate that. I know for me, why I liked Metazoo was I love to collect things. I love to collect cards. And my story is that I didn't collect any cards or anything until about 6 years ago. And so I collected all this stuff as a kid, Pokemon and these sorts of things. But then I went like 15 years or 20, I don't even know, but just not thinking about any of this stuff. And then I found my old binder and a Pokemon cards, and it kind of got me down this rabbit hole of getting into all this stuff again. And since then, I loved collecting as a kid, and I've always had this collector gene. My dad's a collector too. But Metazoo is very collectible to me because creatures are very collectible. Different, like, I think of so many different ways and so many different sets that I would be interested in. I love things, and I don't really know exactly what is a cryptid and what like won't be a cryptid, and how, like I would love like a Greek mythology set, for example, with a lot of like Greek mythological characters that I personally love. There are all sorts of monsters and mythological characters that I love in so many different stories, and I love story. And having a card game that kind of explored all of those characters that I have a connection to and had really cool holos, really cool art, and really focused a lot on collectability by doing these like 1 of 100, cards, by having this limited type print run, is something that's just a natural fit for my enjoyment. So I think that's what interested me and attracted me to Metazoo, was that side. Are you a collector? Like, do you have that like collector gene like I do, or it's probably better to not have it, but
oh yeah, man.
You have that too?
Oh yeah, I got that too. Absolutely. Yeah. My life is a series of obsessions, which may be related to that, in the sense that when I start a thing, I really start a thing. And I need to kind of watch what I get into, because if I get into it, I want to complete it.
Yeah.
So if I start collecting a set, I really want to complete it. And you're right. Yeah. So Metas has been very fun to collect.
Yeah.
Very fun to collect. So yeah.
what do you think about the positives, strong positive reaction and strong negative reaction that people have had to Metazoo? How do you make sense of both of those reactions so far?
Oh yeah, a couple of different things. First, I think that people are fundamentally tribal, and you see this manifest in a lot of different areas. You see it with politics and religion. You see it with money. You see it with nationalities. We are instinctively driven to form tribes and to see ourselves as us versus them. And I think in TCGs, you see some of that, especially because money is involved for a lot of people, and money can get people kind of wound up. You have people wrapped up in a certain investment or a certain game. They form a tribe. They look at the things that are different and they dislike those things. Not everybody, but a lot of it. And then you also have a background of a lot of other games failing. A lot of games have come and gone. There's only a couple that have stood the test of time. And so it gives people that are, and it's realistic to be cautious of new things. It's very realistic, it's very smart, but it definitely gives anyone that has any negative feeling about something, it gives them limitless support in feeling that way, because all they have to do is say, hey, for 30 years, almost nothing has lived more than 8 years. Therefore, I don't even have to look any deeper. I can just dislike this, and 98% of the time, I'll be correct, long term. It's the easy answer. And so I don't know. I think that's it. And then on the flip side, you have people who love it. I think it has to do with a couple of things. The first is the way that the community handles their social media allows for a more vocal, positive or neutral positive discussion to take place, because if people are trolling or aggressive or just going after other people, they mute them or warn them, and they say, hey, be respectful. And so if you want to communicate on the 8,000 person Metazoo Discord, you can't do what is normally seen in a lot of other social media discourses, which is like attack, 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 troll, troll, troll. And so this has been criticized as an echo chamber of positivity, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of nice for people who are tired of negativity. So I think what it's done is it's drawn in a lot of people who want that, who want a positive, supportive community. And then they love Metazoo. I mean, maybe they love it first, but they also it's just nice to hang out in a place where people are like, hey man, how's it going? Good. How are you doing? You need any help today? Yeah. And there's an absence of trolling. So you probably literally have these people who've been banned and kicked out who are very angry and are going after it. And then you have a lot of happy, positive people who are just happy to have found a place that has an absence of that. And that has contributed to the normal fighting that people would do. It's been very interesting to watch this all go down since last March.
I do think that there's another piece. So I agree with all of that. I do think there's another piece of people who are being very positive to push up prices.
Oh yeah,
like that sort of vibe. You know what I mean? So like there are different vibes that people are going to have, right? There's like the positive of like, hey, like I'm looking for a community and friendship and to play a fun card game with people, right? Like there's someone who I think is being motivated by that, who's going to be like, I want to have fun. I want to enjoy something with other people. And it's not enjoyable to hear people say the art is terrible and you're an idiot for liking something that you like. It's like mind your own business, right?
It's not fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And then I think that there's people who really have limited interest in Metazoo or limited interest in a lot of these things. And it's fundamentally, these markets, all these markets, including, all unregulated markets and regulated markets we could turn on the TV and hear a million people giving us their opinions on stocks, and these regulated markets trying to spin us narratives. When we listen to reports from companies, they're trying to give us narratives to try and have us sell it or buy it or whatever. So I think that we can't. That's unavoidable, to a certain extent. But I think that some of it has been a bit extreme or irritating, and so I think some of the negative reaction that some people have, which I think is justified, is against some of that sort of thing. Oh, yeah. But I think there's a feeling of like, that's all that Metazoo is, right? I think that's where there almost can be like a disconnect of like, Metazoo's just filled with people who don't have an interest in it and who aren't enjoying themselves and are just
nobody plays.
Yeah, right. And so I think that I also think that once speaking about the psychological sort of tribal thing, I think when people don't understand something, they often assume the worst. So there can be honest, like an honest misunderstanding. It's like, I don't really find it fun. I don't really like the art that much. So how could someone actually have have a different opinion than me? They must be manipulating, or something like that, and I think that it's an understandable thing about human nature, but I think that there is a maturity issue, which is people realizing that like other people can have different tastes than you, and that's a real thing, and they're not trying to hurt you with their difference in tastes, and what they enjoy.
Yeah, everybody's different. Different is okay.
Yeah.
Simple as that. I got that's a very real thing. Absolutely. I just a couple days ago or yesterday, I don't know, it's a blur. I put a video out saying Nightfall Seal product, which is the latest Metazoo set that came out October 22nd, has dropped in value by about 50% since the pre-orders at the beginning of October. And I immediately got a couple of messages from people on Discord, and they're like, whoa, you can't say that. That's scary. Don't say scary thing. This wasn't from Metazoo, just from individuals who own a lot of Metazoo, who are buying it up, who want to pump it up. They're like, no, you can't do that. That is scary. I'm like, it's not scary. It just is. It is. I get messages saying
it's scary to them because they're being driven by wanting to make a profit, and they don't want. It's a new game, and they don't want the narrative out there that you're not going to make a lot of money from this. And they don't actually believe that the game, or part of them, let me put it this way, may not believe that the game actually has legs, and that it needs those sort of positive financial narratives to push it up or keep it up. But I think that exists all over the place. I see the same thing in modern Pokemon channels and in vintage Pokemon channels too. Like the same sort of, like, if you say something negative, like if you say something price negative, or you say something's overvalued, like it's amazing. Like when I did a video with Mike here, and I said that I hope Metazoo succeeds, and I like the product and I enjoy it, but I would never pay $30,000 right now for a sample Mothman when I could buy with $30,000, I could buy a bunch of like trophy cards that I've been tracking for many years in Pokemon, and it mean a lot more to me because I've been collecting Pokemon since I was a little kid. And people got angry at that, which to me shows like not real rationality. It shows more of like a it's like and it goes back to one of the golden rules we talk about in this channel, which is like, invest in things that have value. And then you don't have to be as afraid. Yeah, you don't have to be as afraid about the short-term narrative, because even if the narrative, the way I think about it, Argos, and I love to hear your opinion, but the way I think about investing often is, if the narrative is overly negative, it's a great time to buy because the actual product is good and the value is good. And if the narrative is overly positive, it's a good time to sell, or it's a good time not to buy, because psychologically that fear and greed cycle, always, there's always a cycle to that. But it's the same product at the end of the day. Just because someone out there is telling you it's great to buy or telling you it's not great to buy, it's literally has the same print run. It's the same exact cryptids, so maybe also people not be swayed, right, by short-term information.
Well, like just a few weeks ago, when Nightfall prices are high, see, quality is assumed based on pricing, which I won't tangent too far on this, but part of the reason that the reserve list is something that I think has helped Magic is because you have these extreme, unless you trash it and you had very high value things anyway, but the perception of collectors is that it is valuable, and therefore it is. And so when you arbitrarily have super high value items, people look at that and they say, well, it must be successful because that just sold for $20,000. So you have this, what is that? Social proofing, the idea that something is valued, something is perceived as valuable, and therefore it is, And so when people are looking at a TCG, a lot of them see prices going up and they just assume based on nothing that everything is good, and there's some rational discourse for that. When you look at the market evaluating a product, fine. But then in 2 weeks, something can change just because of like a new release or something like that has come out. Prices are going down, and all of a sudden the narrative changes. Everything's going down. Nobody cares anymore. Where are we going? Why is nobody caring? And sometimes it has just nothing to do with anything fundamental, which is Metazoo 3 weeks ago. There was just a chorus of everything's great. Metazoo now, because of Nightfall slumping, people are going, is everyone getting out? What's happening? Is it all going to burn down? It's amazing how quickly things can change just because of simple price movements over a few weeks.
Yeah, and people over leverage themselves. People put themselves in situations where they're very anxious about prices going down or losing money, or it's an ego thing. I think people come on YouTube and say, this is what's going to happen. And then feel a pressure to make it happen through a narrative that they're going to spin or something,
That's dangerous. That is a dangerous investment. When you feel like your investment has a better chance of success, if you push it, you're probably in a risky place. Most likely your investment does not care.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We've talked a lot
dangerous spot.
Sorry, go ahead, Argos. My apologies. What were you saying?
Oh no, I used to think about that with stocks. Mm-hmm. Like if you find yourself tweeting about something or posting on Instagram about something, and you find yourself doing it because you think it will make a difference, you might be over leveraged and it might be time to cut back. If you're doing it just for kicks to share, that's fine. But if you do it and you think that your little push is going to push it up a little higher, like you need to take a step back and just make sure you're not in too deep and you're not feeling it too much, That's me. Anyway.
Yeah. I think that when something is very new, it's this very fine line between marketing, right? Because marketing is narratives, right? Like I can tell two very different narratives about Pokemon collecting. I can say, hey, new person, this is it's a wonderful, game that has 20 years of rich history of all of these different IPs. It's the largest IP in the world. It's filled with passionate people who really enjoy this stuff, who are helpful and want to bring you in and want to teach you, or I can say it's a children's card game that weird adults who have collecting addictions, are obsessed with. And, it's and this is often what you hear online is we hate you and you have stuff wrong with you for doing this, or it's the thing you need to do, the best thing to do with your time, and you'll be the richest person on the planet. And, and I think that's a sign of anxiety, right? And a fear of and things that really have value long-term is because they're enjoyable for people. They bring value into their lives, things that people really go back to over a long period of time. And so I'm very much on, you build a community, you build relationships, you build a card game with great art, with great mechanics that people can have fun and play, with great, resources and social media. And it's the whole experience that the prices will be there because it's a limited thing and there's a great experience with it, and that honestly, a lot of that talk can actually drive, I think a lot of that talk has driven people away from Metazoo. Now it's also driven a lot of people towards Metazoo and push price, because there also are, I think, people who look for hot things and want to make quick bucks and think in that sort of way. And I think it's attracted those types too. So I'm fascinated because Metazoo is sort of like an experiment for me to watch on how partnering with with influencers and doing all these things, but with also, I think, what is a great IP that connects with people. I think it'll be interesting, to see how it all sort of shakes out.
It is going to be very, very interesting for sure.
Yeah.
I like that it has, it came at such a good time.
Yeah.
With so much extra money sloshing around the system, all the stimulus and whatnot, and the receptivity of the general population. You think about Magic. When it first came out, there was no meta. The meta was channel a fireball, you're dead. Woo! The meta was first term Juggernaut. But because there was no competition, the market accepted it. And it didn't matter. And it was unevolved. And they had years to clean up their act and improve the artwork and improve the card quality and do all this stuff. And when you're just a guy in a basement and you come up with a card game, you need a little bit of a runway. And Metazoo has been learning, it hasn't come out perfect because it started off as just a guy, maybe two dudes with a great idea. And it is fortunate, in my opinion, because I want them to succeed, that they have met with enough success so that they'll have a runway that is long enough to figure it out.
You have to get people's attention. At the end of the day, you can have something really beautiful and smart that could impact a lot of people's lives in a positive way, no matter what that is, from a card game to any sort of product, to a teacher, to someone who gives great speeches or has great ideas. It's like if there aren't enough people who listen, if you can't get that message out there, if you can't get that product in front of people, they're never going to have a chance to make a decision whether they like it or not. I do think over time, I hope that Metazoo trusts itself too, and because I think that there's also that anxiety of having a new company. And I think over time, trusting, we don't need to do too much. We don't need to push too hard. But I think there's a fine line, and I'm not saying they have, because I don't really know, but there's this fine line. That sounded like I was saying that. I actually didn't mean to say that, because I really do think that there's a fine line. And I'm not in the back in those meetings, sharing my opinion of we should have less product or more product and having those debates and discussions, but there is a fine line of where, of keeping it relevant and in people's faces while not overdoing that and oversaturating, or almost hitting people over the head with we love this stuff. We don't need more right away, or we don't need the next thing, or these types of things. I don't know. These are things that I think, or we don't need this new content creator in it, or this new, connection, or these types of things. So how do you feel, about all of that? And feel free, if you don't want to answer, but I'm interested to hear specifically, do you feel like there have been some moves that you responded to, even just as a collector, more than others, or things that you really liked more than others? Understanding that these are just our opinions too, right? We're not speaking for reality. As some people think online.
So this is exactly, this is what I heard in that back room meeting. No, just kidding. Mike has said for a while that the intention is to create a very collectible game that is also a fun playable game, and everything's going to be a work in progress as far as figuring out exactly what that is. But as a collector, I like that. I like that the person in control wants it to be a very collectible, if not the most collectible game, at least by his design. I'm not saying it will be, I'm just saying that's the vision. So when you have a guy that says he's going to do this, and again, there's a lot of variables here, but at least as a company, their vision is to just keep going. And then when the vision is to ensure collectability as a collector, that's at least nice to hear, because a lot of games, and this always seems counterintuitive to me, but a lot of games come out and their first selling point is, we think it's bad that other games have expensive cards. And we think all cards should be accessible. So in our game, it's all going to be super cheap. And they all die. All of them. And so, yeah, I like the collectability aspect. I love the idea of the secret rares because
it's so stupid on its face, that argument.
It's so stupid on its face, but
things are cheap because nobody wants them. Like that is the reality of life.
Yeah.
You know,
and if you
we have no business and we just produce a ton of something and a bunch of people want it, but we just produce so much of it, and then people just play the game, but there's no collectability at all. There's no interest there's no fun in just having that one item. I don't know. I feel like people
who trading and
I feel like people who are against like collectibility, which is really what it is. It's an argument against collectibility. It's like creating any sort of like chase and rarity is like bad for people, and these should just be just played with. You know, they don't
understand.
I don't understand why that I get the sort of like people have different things that they want from this, and so Mike adding in Nightfall the regular rares instead of just the like hollow, reverse hollow. So there's a cheaper version of those cards to play with, right? Like making that type of decision. Doing an unlimited, a second printing like FAB, where they're, going to do it 10 times or whatever it's going to end up being, of the first one to have more of that in circulation where you still have the collectability, but having a card like Old Scratch or these types of things, yes, it makes the other cards a bit more valuable because it raises the expected value on the booster box, which makes everything a little bit more valuable. People are going to pay more money initially for the booster box, which is going to trickle down a little bit into the expected value of the cards, which will eventually trickle down to the players. But there's a balance, like he added the rares, he's doing the unlimited sets. I think it's weird that people think like everything should be for them, like one way or another. And instead of having some sort of, it can be for both of us. And maybe there's like a middle ground, No.
Or even that is the ideal. And which should be obvious. The middle ground is the ideal. So I like that a lot. I like that they are very receptive to feedback as well. Sometimes they watch the Discord and someone has a great idea. And then a couple weeks later, you see Metazoo adopt it or change course. And being flexible is very important. But as far as the collectability goes, I like a lot of what they've done. But you did speak a little bit on the idea that like you have to watch how much you're doing, or like that is there a point at which it's too much? So what Metazoo has done is they've taken the approach where if there's demand, they will do it. And so if you have a bunch of people saying, where are the plushies? I want a plushie Mothman. Metazoo starts working on it, or like binders, or the pin club thing. I mean, people collect all kinds of random stuff, and what you see when you look at a lot of Pokemon stuff is that people have plushies and Funkos and posters, and that they love Pokemon and they want it represented in so many different areas of their lives, and so they are trying to pursue that with Metazoo.
And it's much more of a moneymaker for Metazoo, for the company. I mean, for the Pokemon company, the merchandise section is so much larger than the trading card section. The trading card is a very, very, very small piece of, Pokemon.
Because it appeals to such a broad audience. How many people have ever owned a stuffed animal as opposed to collect cards? It's a huge audience, And I believe I don't know this, but it seems to me that what Metazoo is attempting to do is to build bridges. And every time they build a new bridge it takes an audience of eyes, and it has them look and say, what's that? What's this Metazoo thing? So they partner with Tops, and there's more top stuff coming. And if you see more things of Metazoo with athletes, Metazoo with, these different top sets, you have sports card collectors that go, what's Metazoo? And yeah, if 95% of them don't walk over the bridge, you still have 5% that do. And then you do it with NFTs, and you do it with plushies and pins and binders and all this other random stuff. And that seems to be their go-to-market strategy, is to give the people what they want and build as many bridges to other avenues of collectibles as possible. And it appears to be working, although it does create that pushback sometimes from people who were here from before, who feel like it is just so much so fast. And it also, from people on the outside who don't see it happening, especially if they're not enmeshed in the Discord and the discussions, they see it and they're just like, this is way too crazy. Like, I haven't seen anything like this since Pokemon. It has to be fake or something. I don't know.
Yeah, back to that sort of, if someone doesn't understand it, they assume nefarious. So for example, like one thing, right, that we could look like, this word like cash grab would be thrown out there, or it would be thrown out that nobody actually wants that stuff. So there are two different narratives here. One, Argos is right. Like you're saying, like people are asking for it. Like, people are saying, I want an NFT of that. I want, the Christmas thing of that. I want the pin collection, right? That's one narrative. The other narrative is we need to sell some stuff to make some money, or we think this stuff will further our brand or get it out to more people. And we're going to use influencers, or we're going to use cards that we're going to connect with it, which we know people, at least the flippers or the resellers, will want to push the value up on the product. And the reality is like that's going on too. So these things are complicated. I mean, these business strategies are complicated. I think what people don't understand is, what do you think Pokemon, like the conversations Pokemon company was having about how do we cater to everyone while also growing this, while also having values, and like, it's an extremely competitive
plushies.
Space. It's an extremely competitive space. It's,
Metazoo just announced that they're going into Walmart in 2022. Yeah. How do you think they got there? Like, how does Metazoo go to Walmart? They can't just walk up and say, "Hey, you like Mothman? Check out my Mothman." No. Walmart wants numbers. So what do you think Pin Club was? That was Walmart. That was getting into Walmart. You can go to Walmart now and you can say, "Hey, on this day in 4 hours, we sold $2 million worth of pins. And on this day, we sold another $2 million worth of pins." Plunk, plunk. And Walmart suddenly goes, "Show me these pins." So I do think that was absolutely a business strategy. People did want it. No, but they made it desirable. They made it collectible. They made it flippable so that you would have demand, so they could go to Walmart and go boom, boom. And now they're in Walmart coast to coast, and it's part of the marketing strategy.
The Tops partnership, that so many people who hadn't heard of Metazoo looked at that, who had no interest in Metazoo. And I'm talking about business people, in the card community who said, wow, a brand new, IP, a brand new thing just sold out immediately and crashed the Tops website. Wow.
Yeah, they said a 14-day window.
Yeah, that's something. Maybe I need to look at this. Maybe we should try to partner with these guys. Maybe we should see what's happening here. Again, gets more eyes, gets more attention. More people then get to decide, do I like this? Do I not like this? I think that my advice to people out there is be interested, learn about how markets work, how these things function. There are always going to be things where you're going to be like, that seemed unnecessary that they did, or a step too far. I wouldn't have done that, or I would have done even more of that. There's always those things, but you don't really know what's going on, or what in the meetings and the partnerships that they're making, and exactly why they're doing what they're doing. But I think that, the advice is like, enjoy, like, you're a consumer. So consume the product if you like it. If you don't,
and if you
don't like it,
don't.
Yeah, and I guess it comes from that place of I don't like reality. Like I don't like that's how business works. I don't like that's how success, like that's the type of things that successful companies have to do, and it gets into those types of places, which I think is a fair, it's a conversation, to have about, but yeah.
It's a fair feeling, but like you said, it's part of success. You can't always do things a certain way. Sometimes you just have to do certain things in order to get through the door and build your business. And you try to do it in as fair a way, I suppose, and you want to keep integrity ideally as a company. But like sometimes you just got to put Mothman in the pins so that you'll sell a lot of pins. Sometimes you got to do it. It's nice looking Mothman too. Looking forward
putting
to
Mothman in the second set also.
Yeah.
Mothman in the second set also to help increase the EV of that, because that was the most established, price point also. Like I think that it's interesting that our brains, or some people's brains, see that and say, you're trying to trick me. Like I see what you did.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I
see what you did.
Like I'm like, Metazoo is going to be something I'm going to enjoy because they're going to give me chase. They're going to give me value. They're going to give me collectibility. They're going to do some of that. But there's a line for me as a collector. There's a line of like, there has to be like also like art that I like, a concept that I like. I'm not just interested in chasing serialized things just for rarity. I'm not just interested in rarity. There's like this magic balance. I think what consumers need to do is they need to be careful not to get addicted to things, and they need to be careful of like the greed and of the addiction also of trying to make money or flip, and the danger of these types of markets. Or these types of markets are extremely dangerous to be placing large bids and large purchases on these things, hoping that it's going to go to the moon and that you're, going to just repeat what you did with Cryptid Nation. And, everyone can place their bets exactly how they want, but there's danger to all of that.
Especially with an early thing. You don't know. I mean, like you talked about the $30,000 sample Mothman. That was pretty wild. And that was a while ago. I know of one that sold for $50,000 after that. And yeah, Mothman seems pretty prominent right now, but you know who's not in the third set? Mothman. So if it's not in the third, is it in the fourth? Maybe. What about when we leave the United States? Does Mothman go along the seven seas over to the Yokai Islands, or does he not? Do we have a new flagship cryptid? We don't know. So if you think immediately, Mothman's awesome, people like it, but if you just assume the Mothman up front is the next Charizard, you're just gambling, and you could be right, but you could be wrong. And if you're putting 10s, 20s, 50s, or $100,000 in that, that's a big bet. It's just good to know. Like if Bigfoot is the champion of wilderness, who's to say that sample Bigfoot isn't gonna? And everybody knows who Bigfoot is. Why not? Why not in 10 years? Or maybe it's Babe the Blue Ox. I don't know. So yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of risk in these kind of collectible things, this fear and greed stuff, this prototype stuff that's with no track record and no, it's a huge roller coaster, and you do have to be very careful.
Yeah. I think it's a great learning opportunity for people to watch these things, who are interested in the psychology of collectibility and demand and hype and FOMO, and it's like real time. It's happening right in front of you with all this stuff.
Oh, it's been so good, so fast. Like, so when I trade stocks, I usually prefer lazy trades. I like swing trades and indexes because if you trade an index fund, you're less susceptible to news releases and you just go basically just on the technicals for the most part. And I like medium-term swing trades, like over weeks or months, so that your patterns are less susceptible to random, sudden changes. You can just kind of ride the trend, turn and ride the trend. But every now and then, if there's a lot of volatility in a market, I wouldn't say day trading, but like short-term swing trading, where you're just running it for a few days and you're really staring at the technicals. And Metazoo has been on such a wild ride since last March. It's felt like I am buckled into the seat and I'm day trading some like high action biotech that is just like Crypto Nation boxes were 150 in July. They were $850 or so at the beginning of August. They went back to $400 by September, back up to $1,000 more recently. Now they're $750 or $800. It's been insane that all of that has happened. These fear and greed cycles, we've already had several cycles of fear and greed in less than a year. And it is a very good learning opportunity to see in such a short period of time what normally takes, I think, a much longer period of time to sort of play out. We'll see I'm assuming over time it'll smooth out, but right now it is just, right now we're kind of in a bear cycle again, where prices have started to stabilize, but they've been in like a downtrend for a little bit. We'll see when it turns around, but again, another just great learning opportunity to see. I saw you were talking about Pokemon recently, and that some things have been kind of on the down as well. And that market much better than me. But with such a broad game like Pokemon, there's so much more money in it. It's probably more like a large cap thing. Yeah, you have areas of the market that move more quickly, but the market overall, you can probably kind of look at like an S&P thing where you're kind of seeing these longer term trends. And Metazoo is that roller coaster that's just jackrabbiting along.
Yeah. Pokemon. So I have had items that in the last 3 years went up 30 times in value, 30 times.
Okay.
And dropped 70% in the last like 3 months. So they're still up, 10 times, or so. So from where they were at the bottom or at a couple of years ago, but have dropped, there are a lot of things in the market that have dropped 60, 70%. If your item has dropped only 30%, that it's really holding up, much better than most of it. We're pretty near most of the market is fairly near pre Logan Paul. Like so when Logan Paul came in, actually the market had already gone up a ton. And then he came in, and then the whole market like doubled, and certain things like tripled or quadrupled, like base set, or certain things that he was specifically, showing more and that newer people jumped into. And we've seen a lot of things kind of fall back to sort of pre-Logan Paul, So, there were tons of videos and tons of things at the time saying, Logan Paul's forever changed Pokemon, all these types of ideas. And it's a very interesting study on how an influencer putting something out there, basically what happened, and I explain it, is the demand is much larger now than before Logan Paul came in, because Logan Paul and all of the other streamers and YouTubers who started making videos about Logan Paul and Pokemon, all of that stuff has dramatically increased demand in the hobby, and it's sustained. There's so much more demand now than there was before, but there's a lot more supply of the vintage now than there ever was, because people have been actually finding their collections in their closets, all sorts of things, grading. There's so much more money to be made that now there's so much more available also at any one given time. So it requires so much more demand and so much fundamentally more money to absorb all that new product. And so where all that like equilibrium rests, will be interesting. Nightfall is a completely different thing, because Nightfall, there's a set amount of it. It's all in pristine mint condition, and it's not in closets. It's not going to be found and slowly graded and come out over time. It's all dropped out at once. and then
being
everyone sort of
graded
like,
immediately. Yeah.
yeah, and everyone's sort of like, let's see, like I think it should be 10,000 for, I think 13,000 makes sense for Old Scratch. It's like, okay,
Just
sure.
random numbers. Yeah.
I mean, sure, but that's
Whatever.
no time to establish that price point over a long period of time. And so Pokemon has had a much longer period of time of getting those prices established. Magic even longer, right?
Yeah.
I know you follow Magic quite a bit. So, but with Pokemon, this is we're trying to reach sort of a new equilibrium, which may take a couple of years because of how backed out PSA and other things are, I think, for all the supply to come back. But Pokemon's much better off now than it was pre-Logan Paul, even if some of the prices are starting to get similar, because once all of this supply gets absorbed, which it had to eventually anyway, because as prices would go up over time, more and more of it would come out, hold the prices down. So instead, it's kind of like getting a lot of it out. And it is a finite, even though there's so much of some of this vintage stuff, it can take a nice decent chunk out of it. And then you should see prices, go up as long as demand sustains, which nobody knows. But with Metazoo, it's very different. It's like, okay, it's very limited. We have some big,
so different.
We have some big, people buying like hundreds of boxes and, heavily mass speculating and, it owning like 5% of it, 10% of it. There are probably people out there who own 10% of it. I mean, right? These crazy numbers.
Some people they'll get as much as they can. I know a guy who he really does. The thing about Metazoo is it's in such high demand, it's hard to get what you want. Even people who are willing to buy out entire stores are calling around, and they're used to just getting what they want. And with Metazoo, since everybody wants that, even the biggest whale in the block ends up with, and it's not a small number, but it ends up with 300 of the 2,000 boxes that they wanted. But yeah, like I know some guys who have hundreds of boxes. I don't know any thousands yet, but he's probably out there. He's just not loud about it. Maybe not. I don't know. Print runs are going up. We'll see. I like when people talk numbers in a thing that's only a couple months old. The appropriate value of this is $6,000 based on
how did it sell like that? That's so cheap. Or how is it so expensive? Like, with the, and when you have that sort of reaction, that's a human reaction. But understand how irrational we are as creatures. We see a couple of comps is the famous word this year. And the sports guys and the sports channels like talking comps. They don't ever talk like rationality and how much something should be worth based on some fundamentals, based on a long-term price trajectory, based on supply and demand and where we think it's going to go in the future.
Yeah.
And based on demographics, do we think there are going to be more people who want to, multi-generational are going to be people who grow into this? Are we getting young people and then our 30-year-olds who are going to have more income coming into it? They don't have like educated conversations. They just say, well, the comp was 100,000. That's what it's worth, or the comp's 100 and then 120. So it's going to go to 140 by the end of the year, or $1 million by the end of the year, because and it's dangerous in the sense that it's for people who are short-term speculating. It's not so dangerous probably in the long run. But figuring out like when to buy in, that becomes more of like the question, I think. And we're all there with you, but for you, I mean, do you plan on, like, may I ask like what your goals are for your collection in Metazoo? Have you set goals yet? Or is it you just kind of feeling it out as you go along?
Oh yeah. So I have two different ways that I look at collecting. Well, I don't ever like to make blatantly bad financial decisions collecting, but I do have like a fun side, and then I have a financial side, but my point is, even the fun side, I don't like to make fun a black hole, but I'm willing to like not make obviously what I think are great decisions just because it's fun. So on what I feel is the good decision financial collecting side is usually sealed product. And the reason is just because over time you can't go back. And as people open and grade, sealed product always has the magical possibility of having that PSA 10 Mothman. And especially when you look at secret rares and the impact of lotto cards and sets, what we see in Magic is that over time, sets that have lotto cards dramatically outperform sets that do not. And so, and I think it's just this issue of when you have a $10,000 card sitting in a box, more people open the box over time, and then it drives more scarcity and drives the sealed product up. So when I look at Metazoo first edition cards, first edition sets having secret rares, what I see is a huge green light on sealed product. Now, of course, this you have to have stability in Metazoo. Like I know that. I'm just saying if Metazoo does persist and grow, or even just persist, when you have lotto cards and sets, that's a great green flag for me from an investment and collecting standpoint. But my lofty goal is I want a complete PSA 10 set of Kickstarter. I was around during the Kickstarter, so I have a lot of Kickstarter stuff before it went crazy, and so I have a set of Kickstarter, but I don't just want a set. I want like a PSA 10 set, and so I've started to just look for deals, and started to gather that. It's going to take me a long time, probably. Hopefully, this dip goes a little deeper, because people are starting to put pretty good deals on PSA 10 stuff compared to what they were even just a few weeks ago. So I'd like it to kind of keep dipping, and I can achieve that lofty collecting goal.
Yeah, this is a bad time to be buying PSA cards because people are paying $150 to express grade and factoring that into the price, and those cards will $10, $15, $20 to grade eventually. So
that's a good point. A premium on the chase of a PSA card is now that's a good point.
So there's only one. So the cheapest service right now at PSA is just the express service that you have to pay $150 for. So there isn't a cheaper. So when they open up the cheaper services, people's cost basis will be much lower. There'll be a lot more people then sending them out who are basically have stacks of them waiting. Like I have a few hundred Kickstarter cards that I'm going to send out to PSA to get graded when prices are cheaper. I would just never pay, unless I'm flipping that card into the market, I would never pay $150. So,
do you think when they open back up, do you think it'll still be like, will they really catch up, or will it be like, yeah, you can submit for $25-$30, but then it's like 2025 by the time you get your card back,
I think so. They say that they're going to do 20 million cards a year, that they're going to boost production to 20 million cards a year. So wow. I think that I think they're going to do it personally. And I've talked to some people who pick it up. Yeah, I've talked to some people who have like some insider knowledge and are within the PSA company. And like if I were to place a bet, I would bet that Nat Turner coming out and talking more about how we're planning on getting it down to $10 already, saying that means that they're pretty far. They're a lot closer than people think, because he would never come out, in my opinion, and say that this early on. It was 4 years from now that they're going to do that. I just don't think that makes logical sense, like tactical sense. So because I don't think anyone was like clamoring for him to say that. Like they've already lost the share in the short run to CGC and Beckett and these other places. I also think PSA will get it back real quick once they open. Just my personal opinion, because the prices are much higher on PSA cards. But so the whole grading game is super. That's where I would say is like, if I have more of an expertise would be in grading, like grading things, buying and selling graded stuff, and I've always found a much higher margin to be made on grading than sealed product. But I completely agree with you on lottery cards within sealed product, because I think that what I see is that people don't actually break boxes on expected value, because we're not that rational. Like the vast majority of people are not that rational. So for example, like a jungle, I'm going to say some Pokemon boxes, but a Pokemon box like Jungle first edition, which historically has had actually pretty good expected value. but there's no single card you could pull in there that will pay for the box in PSA 10. So it's more of like accumulation of getting a number of them and then having number of them grade like 10s and 9s, and then also grading all the commons and uncommons. And you're going to actually have a very nice expected value versus opening a Deoxys box or a Skyridge box, which are these Pokemon boxes that have like one card that could sell in for $50,000 or $25,000 if you get it in a PSA 10, but your odds of hitting it are like 1 in 72 packs to hit a gold star. There's a lot of numbers there, but the expected value is actually much lower because of how much harder it is to hit that versus a regular holo. So something like this with like old scratch or red ink, right? Even though the expected value of that, like that card itself may only add like $5-10 to the expected value, psychologically
by 500 boxes,
right?
Yeah,
psychologically it adds way more than $5 to $10 because it's about the experience and the thrill of hitting that and making all of your money in one go and making a lot more. And people will overspend on the high lottery chase because they want that excitement and possibility of hitting. It's the same thing that fuels the lottery and people spending on very high jackpots, even though you have extremely low odds to hit it. So it's the same type of, psychological mechanism fueling all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I used to do more like single cards stuff. And I at some point every now and then I will, if I see something that I just think is obvious.
Yeah.
But I guess I stopped, and I see myself as sort of like a lazy. It's not lazy, but I jokingly refer to it as lazy TCG investing when I look at sealed products, because you're right, they're not going to make as much, but they just sit there as a mutual fund of cards, and they just kind of slowly do that, and then it's fun. It doesn't take as much work. And then when I want to work, I could go in and pick up Metazoo or Arfax or something. I'd like to get more into, I'll have to pick your mind on some other time. I'll pick your mind on grading, because PSA is not something that a lot of MTG people do, except for maybe recently it's starting to branch a little bit more. But so my history in MTG doesn't give me a lot of PSA experience, but Metazoo is going very much, I think, leaning into the PSA as the preferred grader. And so that's an area that I need to expand my knowledge on quite a bit, I think, if I'm going to just continue on this Metazoo train.
Sure. Yeah. So it's been fascinating to watch the grading card companies this year, because with any sort of bubble and mania, there's a million businesses that open up, a million YouTube channels like ours that open up, but also a million businesses that follow the people's attention and the money and all that sort of thing. So it's going to be really interesting to see which ones succeed or do it better. And also, does that improve PSA? Does PSA lose some of that market share? I tend to look mostly at downside. And I think the big risk for PSA, I worry that they're overshooting, like in that 20 million, and they're going to overshoot on capacity. And then what are they going to do? Are they going to have to like lay a bunch of people off? Like, what does all that look like? I'm actually more on the other people are worried they're not going to get big enough. I'm worried they're going to overshoot. So if I was at that company, I would be that guy who's like, don't listen to those people bullying us to get bigger. We don't know how long this thing is going to sustain itself. We need to gradually expand and be safe. And who cares if we lose out on some of that profit on the front end? On the back end, we're going to be in a much better position. That's always how I function.
It's hard to know how long this is going to, there's clearly a scarcity trade that has been building for years in this country and in the world. And you see it, like, what is Bitcoin if not just at its core scarcity? And you see it in collectibles, people chasing scarcity, and NFTs, they're chasing scarcity. And with scarcity comes the ability to build it up. And you just don't know how long that's going to run. I've been thinking about what could cause it all to come down. I tell you what, I thought perhaps like a worldwide pandemic recession could bring it down. But then the government responds by saying there is no recession, and they just pump money into the system and they keep everything going up. And then you realize, well, if that's how it's going to be, and that could change too. You never know. But if they run that for 10 years, this like easier money, there can be no recession really for 10 years, who knows? These bubbles could pop in 2, it could pop in 6 months, it could pop in 10 years. The Fed could jack the interest rates way up to cool everything off, or they could just let it burn to pay off debt. I don't know, man. And when you look at that from a business perspective, yeah, it's good to have that guy who says this could all pop in 6 months. And then, there's some other guy who's like, no. We're in this for 10 years. We're in this for 10 years. Bitcoin to 500K. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm a spend more money building out quality product and just enough on the narrative. Like I think I'm more of a believer, because I think narrative is extremely important at critical times. Like I think if Metazoo hasn't partnered with Rudy and created a narrative, that like there's certain things that Metazoo did which I think are extremely critical in their success. But I think that there's also times where you've sort of made it, or it's almost time to like switch, like let's focus less on that and put more of our attention here and make sure and I'm not, these are all just examples, guys. I'm not in the boardroom where if I were actually, all my opinions could shift from what I'm about to say, but these are just examples. But we really need to make sure no boxes get damaged. We need to make sure that these kits, that these, what do they call it? The spell books don't have reverse hollows in them. And then our fan base buys them thinking that they're hollows and gets incredibly disappointed. Like we need to spend less time on the new products, and we need to spend more time on the core product, making sure that it is an A+, because that serves the best interest of our core fans and followers and people who trust us. And those types of things they're normal in startups, but they do leave those negative feelings and that concern and that anxiety. I think that's also maybe some of where the negativity comes from, But I'm not, again, I don't know the difficulty of logistics, whose fault or issue, or could that be avoided? It's not, unless you're in there day to day, you don't know why. You don't really have an answer, for what happened. And it could be totally inappropriate for them to tell us what happened. It might be a lot better to just make sure it doesn't happen again, or put that sort of effort, in that place, for example.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Crypto Nation second edition, because they've said again that the spell books have been fixed, that the pull ratios are more normalized. But at this point, I think now people are kind of in a wait and see. It'll be, maybe the spell books will be loaded, and they'll push it the other way, and we just don't know with this thing. I think the way it's being packaged, it's not an algorithmic machine sorting, and so it's subject to human error. And we'll probably, for as long as it's being produced in that way, we'll probably keep seeing little things. They're getting on the Cardamundi schedule, but it's hard to do that. That schedule's booked out quite a ways. I know with some of my interactions with some other games in the past who have tried to get onto US printing schedules, it's not as easy as just changing your mind and calling them and saying, well, here's our game. When can we do this? Can we do it Tuesday? You're 9 months out, especially now with demand going to the moon. So yeah, I think it's fair to expect some continued logistical issues, some that they will try to improve, with some success, hopefully, and some random human factors until you can get into a more standardized manufacturing environment, which is maybe by wilderness, maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah. And I think, some understanding from the perspective of these are small print runs Metazoo does not make a lot of money on these small print runs. And so they're like the reason like Pokemon makes so much money is because they print 50 million, right? They're paying the artists a certain amount for, but every set they sell 50 million boxes, of it. Metazoo's doing tiny things, and when you have a much tinier print run, your deal with who's printing it is going to be a lot less. You might be able to hire much less quality control. Who knows where the money needs to go to. Maybe the money needs to go to the artists, and when it goes to the artists or goes to certain people, then that money goes away from the quality control, and then you have more of these quality control issues. You have like the really bad clumping in the Halloween promos, for example.
Bad or good clumping.
but there's a difference, right, between the Kickstarter, which had some mild clumping, and then the these two examples where it's like it's significant enough that like there's no way this is random at all, right? I mean, this is
you noticed that too. The Kickstarter was actually a pretty well distributed product, like from a ratio and clumping perspective, and so we know it's possible, but it's interesting that they've had trouble 2 times in a row when they got it right the first time. It's interesting.
And so obviously that's a scaling thing, clearly. Scaling thing. And
I bet they have so much going on. Like, I can't imagine going from a place where I work at another job and I am working on this as a hobby in the background for a few years. COVID happens. I'm at home for a year and I finally have time to do this. And then within a span of months, just a couple of months, I go from just a guy to realizing this is going to be huge when I partner with a guy worth over $100 million who wants to take this to the next level. And then from that moment, they have never slowed down. I bet they are just like, there are balls coming in from all angles, and it is a game of catch and pass and catch and pass and catch and pass and pivot and improve, meeting. I'm glad it's not me. It's got to be difficult, and it's impressive they've made it, this far the way they have with all with the huge growth and all the partnerships and whatnot. But you're right, like they really do need to get that core product nailed down from a quality standpoint. I think people would like to see that. That's their next big challenge, and I think if they can do that, it's going to make a big difference. And if they can't, they're going to start losing some people, at least from the TCG thing.
And I don't think any of this stuff is going to matter that much in the long run. It's sort of like
growing pains.
Sort of like growing pains, and I think that like Mike's long-term vision and really wanting to build this into a thing that has all of these different connections and sort of stuff is exciting. And and I've said this to Mike a number of times, but just like enjoy that. Like, it's cool, like I don't understand how, like, I think part of my disconnect with people, like I have all of these, like I can sit here and judge and be critical, right? But like, why don't you want it to succeed? Who loves cardboard and it isn't impressed and amazed by a guy who starts his own game, who tries to grow it into a really cool, huge, crazy thing, and partners with all of these cool influencers. And
it's just awesome.
It's a cool thing. It's like taking it back.
Like, I'm like, so cool.
Yeah. Even if it like blows up or it's like they mess some things up, it's like, it's really cool. Like I think that that's maybe missing sometimes from, it's like from that, from the conversation.
Yeah.
Of just like,
I have this idea that, there's something I call the noisy few. And I don't mean this in any way subtract from this population of people who are giving this opinion, but I believe that something like 90% of the noise is produced by 10% of the people, and that there's this large volume of people who don't contribute to the conversation, especially on the internet. For example, in YouTube videos, you often see like 10% of views within the first couple of days respond with a click of like a like or a dislike, and it tapers off over time. But like initially, even you might start with 20% and then 10%, and everyone else is just showing up and observing and not interacting. And you have passionate people who are the noisy few. And on the internet, a lot of those passionate people are negative, but even though we see it and perceive it as the majority of people, I think it is the significant minority of people who are voicing these opinions. And so that's when you look at, like, what does the market say? So when they announced Pin Club, the majority of noise that day was, why are they doing products that are not cards? They need to focus on cards, not pins. Cards, not pins. That was the noise you heard. But then they sold $2 million worth of pins in a day, in an afternoon. And so the objective body says, holy crap, there were 40 or 50,000 orders that went through, or they sold out tops. Boom. Immediately, the 50,000 boxes of tops immediately. But the noise you heard was, why are they doing tops? This is ridiculous. They shouldn't do this. They should focus on the game. So I don't know. It's interesting how the internet changes our perspective and sometimes clouds the reality of a thing, including the reality of how people are reacting to it. So it'd be nice if those people that are feeling passionate and passionately negative, if they would maybe take a step back and just say, you know what? Some other people love this thing. It doesn't make sense to me, but maybe I can just let them love it and just go get a latte or something instead of trashing it. I don't know. Like, I didn't grow up with Pokemon because it was before my time. It was after my time. You know, by the time Pokemon came, I was just a little bit like, when did Pokemon was what, 99 was the card game, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, 96 would have been like the Japanese, original kind of base set, and then 99 into the US. Yeah.
So I was like 18. You know, I was like going to college. I was into some other stuff. I missed Pokemon as a younger child. And but
you're
like,
at the magic age more.
Yeah, I'm the magic age. I'm the, we still had AOL. Internet sucked. So what do? You go to the game store, you hang out, you get 25-cent hamburgers from McDonald's, and you play Magic all night on Friday. And then your mom picks you up later. And that's how I grew up. But people love Pokemon. Good for them. I love that. I love when people love random stuff. Like, good. I don't know anything about whatever that is. Good for you, man. You look like you love it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. I don't need to change everyone's mind.
So you feel up for going into some comments here?
Yeah, let's dive in. I'm sure there's
like,
spice.
So we have some comments and this is just like very typical types of comments that I hear like from like about Metazoo. So, how am I supposed to like something I can't even buy, and it's not to buy, to open, to enjoy, and the TCG it's to hold and possibly make money. Nothing about the TCG screams fun. Seems like a nightmare. So when I read that, the first thought I have is like it's not a nightmare because there are a lot of other card games. And so the first question I have is like, why? Like, I agree actually with a lot of the sentiment of this, which is like, it's frustrating, even for someone who has the money, it's frustrating to be paying $200 to $220 for a brand new item that I think may not have financial legs, and I'm having to pay that much for something when I could buy 3, ETB, even more now, celebrations. Why should I put that money into Nightfall? And I say, very reasonable question, sir. And that's for your decision to make, is it worth it or not? I think that the frustration of like, they didn't make enough of it, these types of things, these types of questions, I think that they're reasonable questions. Maybe when we have Mike on here again, it's like we can ask like do you wish you had made more? Like, do you think, do you wish the price was lower? But it's like, again, it's like some people really like that. I hear also people really complaining that the boxes are so cheap. because they wanted to make more money from it, and they're frustrated that like
It's
it's
the
a
haves
failing
and the
game.
have-nots.
Yeah, it's a failing game because these boxes are only $200 when Cryptid Nation first edition was like 800, and it's a nightmare, So it's kind of like you can't win. You seem like, think about it from Mike's perspective. It's like you can't. Everyone's gonna hate you no matter what.
Yeah, I see it as a two-part question.
Yeah.
The first is a person who perhaps just wanted to at least try it, and then saw the prices and was like, "Well, I don't even know if I like it. I'm not going to pay that if I don't even like it."
Yeah.
And the second is a person who either doesn't like it, so then why even look? If you look and you hate it, go play something else. It's okay. Or they became frustrated, because they wanted to try it, and then they saw this whole system and they became frustrated. And then that second half of the question comes out where they think it's all trash, right? It's a nightmare. And to that, I would say, yeah, some of it is expensive. Fortunately, though, it's starting to calm down because Nightfall now, everything but the booster boxes is very close to MSRP. So you can get a spell book for $50, which was the intended price. And then Cryptid Nation second edition is coming out probably in January, and that is all going to be at MSRP. And you might even find some discounts to MSRP with some reputable stores. Like I'm selling it at some small discount to people in my Patreon. It's all MSRP. But then again, everything I've sold has always been an MSRP because I'm insane. I just like burning money. No, because I like the vision of it. But it's becoming more accessible. And if you think about the print runs, could they have printed more? Well, consider this, when they printed Kickstarter, they made 2,500 boxes and it did not sell out. They had all this leftover. So then they had to kind of find a place for the leftover. And then all of a sudden popularity blew up, right? But it didn't like 100x blew up. You had when I joined the Discord, there were like 700 people in the Discord. So that is when they were looking at printing Cryptid Nation first edition. This was like last, March, April. And they're looking at, well, how much should we make? And they multiplied the number by 10-fold. Can you imagine if Pokemon today multiplied the next set print run by 10 times? Like what kind of a decision that is? It's a huge market decision to make that much of an assumption, because what if you overshoot? You didn't even sell out your 2,500 boxes before, and now you're going to make 25,000 plus spell books and blister packs and all this sort of stuff. What if you're left with half of it and you flood the market? So they, at the time, set the printing schedule, set the numbers, and they're still trying to raise capital too. Like they have investors, but they're trying to run a lean business and be efficient. So they set the Cryptid Nation first edition print run at like 25,000 boxes, and then, lesser numbers of everything else. Well, then Metazoo blew up, and it turns out that was not enough. But by that time, it's already being printed. It's already being boxed up and shipped. You can't just call the printer in June and say, oops, I know you're already packaging it. Can you print another 25,000? It's too late. It's got to come from overseas, So then they're going into Nightfall. Same thing. When you're planning Nightfall, you're releasing Cryptid Nation. So you don't have the numbers from when Nightfall is released. All you have is the numbers from when Cryptid Nation is released. And at the time they thought, well, let's double it. Like we're doubling it again. We just 10x'd it. Let's double it again. And they actually more than doubled it because they increased the other products more. And I honestly think they're doing their best to maintain collectibility and not flood the market while making it accessible. But the meteoric rise in demand from a logistics standpoint has just been very difficult to keep up with. So
yeah, look,
and that'll all be resolved with second edition. Yeah, it's hard. and PSA has been around for forever.
Yeah.
And even they couldn't do it. They had to come up with a strategy and like barricade the doors and figure it out.
Again, it sort of gets, so this theme that we keep talking, right, is like negative things are assumed. So it's when you don't know, instead of it being like, maybe they wish they had made more going back. Like now, maybe they wish they had done more. Like if they had known how popular it was going to be, maybe Mike wishes that it could have been higher. Maybe he doesn't because he likes that it's rarer and that it's pushing collectability, which is also okay. But maybe he wishes there were more of them. But hindsight is 2020 with a lot of these things. Okay. We have a question. So the basis of long-term success for collectibles is emotional attachment. In what way is a fan base forming deep emotional attachment to Metazoo right now? How will it be more than just a fad? Very reasonable question, I think.
Yeah, that is a reasonable question. Well, I think with Metazoo, there's two factors, because with a lot of things, you have completely original IP. When Pokemon came out, nobody knew what a Pikachu was. So you had to develop a storyline, ancillary products, you had movies and games and stuff. And then you had a generation of people who grew up emotionally attached to a Pikachu or a Charizard, whatever. The interesting thing about Metazoo is that you already have generations of people who know not all of it, but a lot of it. Headless Horseman and the Wendigo. Like, I love Wendigo because when I was a kid, my older brother always told us campfire stories of this Wendigo, and they were all like ghost stories, And so it's interesting because I have that attachment to Wendigo, and it transfers over in some regard to the Wendigo in the card. And yeah, it's just a card, and it could be, the response to that is, well, then anyone could make this game, right? And that is where I think Metazoo has to make it their own, and that is their challenge. You do have pre-constructed resonance and emotional attachment to a lot of these things. Babe the Blue Ox, Paul Bunyan, Mothman, Chupacabra, Bigfoot, all this stuff. But the challenge for Metazoo is going to be developing the game to make it a fun game that people like to play, ideally building out something competitive so people have something to watch, maintaining collectibility so collectors can like collecting the things they love, and building a unique storyline, ideally, to add to it and maintain that uniqueness, because otherwise somebody else is just going to come along and make a Mothman and hope you love it.
In order for Metazoo to get anywhere near the level of Pokemon, you're going to have to hear someone say the word Mothman, and then in your head, think of the card, think of the art style, think of the specific type of art and drawing that this does. And, will that ever happen? I mean, that's an unbelievably huge goal to have. Most people, obviously with Pokemon, it's like you say Pikachu or Charizard, almost everyone from three generations,
worldwide,
knows exactly what that is, even though, and they created that IP. So Metazoo's task is a little bit different. Now, of course, Metazoo is also creating some of these I don't even know what they're called. Are they like mage casters, or what's the terminology?
Caster. Yeah. So the storyline of Metazoo is that
the people who are they're creating them.
The fine peoples of Metazoo. Yeah. Adam Ackler, Sam Sinclair, Rose, M, and Indrid Cold. Like they have a storyline. And I like it. It's only 2 chapters in. Chapter 3 comes out now, and chapter 4 is in a few weeks. I like it. It's a fun, unique premise, actually. And if they continue down that road, they'll have their own. Yeah, they have their own slant. Will people always hear Mothman and think of Metazoo? You're right. That is a big task to try to undertake,
and even bigger with something like Bigfoot. Let's say, because everyone knows who Bigfoot is. I don't think everyone knows, or the majority of people know who Mothman is. Personally, I would guess.
I think you're right. Yeah, Bigfoot has way more notoriety than Mothman. Or maybe you've heard of Mothman, but only because of like a movie, Mothman Prophecies, and you didn't really know the history. But I don't know that you have to conquer the image of Bigfoot in order to have. But even comparing it, Pokemon is so huge. Like it's such a monster IP that it doesn't even have to. I'm not even saying it'll ever get there. I mean, they have huge goals, but
I want to take this moment to say that's the danger of buying things for $30,000 here, where you can buy an even rarer item in Pokemon for the same amount, and it's Pokemon. Pokemon is every like it's just such a much. I mean, it's like night and day at this point, you know. And so now where MetaZoo has it is the sets are much rarer, are much lower printed. Kickstarter's much lower printed, right?
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of things that we'll see. If it becomes big, it only has to be like 1/10 the size of Pokemon to get the same price because there's 1/10 the product. You know, you can get into all of these like these ideas, but I think part of it and part of it for me too, I was watching a channel talk really like negatively about how Nightfall was doing and like really panicking and worrying. You know, and I was feeling like, wow, like such unrealistic expectations for what these things are. like
they thought it was gonna do what Cryptonation did or something.
It's like, what do people think this is? This is a brand new thing built on these long-standing things that we are connected to, that people do have the emotional attachments that MetaZoo does not own, but MetaZoo is working to sort of develop a relationship with or incorporate or use as part of its core brand. And I'm very interested, Argos, in how that works long term. And there is the point you're bringing up, which we've talked about here, is like, what other card companies see the success? Maybe a bigger card company with more money, with more resources, comes in and builds a monster card game or these types of things in the next few years, and has a lot more money and partners with bigger companies, and you know, tries to take the space away, or you know, I mean, you just never know with these types of things.
You never know. You know, it's funny. If Nightfall booster boxes were $800 right now, what you would hear is people saying it's ruining the game. And because Nightfall booster boxes are not $800 right now, what you hear is the game is ruined. It's funny, you know.
You can't.
In theory, what you should be hearing now is, wow, Nightfall products are close to MSRP, and the booster boxes, although not MSRP, have come down quite a bit. You know, but for some reason, those people aren't as vocal right now, or they don't know, They saw the barrier before, and they're not aware that it is actually that barrier has been coming down, I suppose.
So I got one box through like the Rudy kit. So that's been the box. So I bought a second box when TCG Player had their like cashback thing that I'm planning on opening and enjoying. But I would love it to go down more in price so that I could, you know, open some more of it guilt-free and not have to be anxious or worried about the money, you know. So for me, what Nightfall does in price over the next few weeks has literally zero to do with how successful this game is going to be. And this is what surprises me of the people who have these reactions. You know, it's like the timeline and the lack of patience, you know, it is a lot of the same stuff I've seen in Pokemon, you know, this year, and we see in other things. It's clearly people who they don't have like long time horizons. Like when I join something, I want to do this forever or for the foreseeable future. I want to collect and enjoy these things for the rest of my life. So I'm in no rush for prices to get to a certain point, or you know, or this or that. It's very much of, I just want to see good quality decisions, high quality product that I enjoy, that other people enjoy. And you know, I had a lot of fun. I mean, I'd give it, you know, 8 out of 10. I would say opening Nightfall. You know, it's
fun. I like it too.
It's really fun. And like I haven't opened up. I'm trying to think of the last box of something that I thought enjoyed more. It's been a long time. Like I enjoyed opening Nightfall more than I enjoyed opening Vivid Voltage and some other Darkness Ablaze for sure, which I didn't enjoy that much. You know, so I just very subjectively, like I had a genuinely good time, and I was not searching to make money. I was just opening it. I want to create a binder of it and maybe grade, you know, some of the key cards in PSA 10 for my collection and just kind of see how it does over time. It goes, you know, so.
Same, you know, the set's already been sold, and even though a store can't sell a spellbook at $100, they should have been 50 anyway. I mean, the fact that the set is selling at MSRP is not bad. So yeah, to think that it means the death of the game is interesting. And Metazoo has already reached a there's a critical point where they can cover their cost, and have enough money to expand and develop and improve. And they have already passed that. They've well passed that, especially when you look at like the money coming in from ancillary products, right? So like, yeah, if some people drop off from Nightfall, that's it is what it is.
Yeah.
But then the game persists, and then anyone who thought it was dead because of a 2-week trend is the same person who comes back in later when it starts to fire back up, and then they catch it halfway up and they're like, blah, it's going to the moon again.
The more you have people like that in something, the more up and down you're going to see things go. Yeah. Right. And the more you have sort of a stable enjoyer collector base and there's a good amount of product being printed, they're not over flooding the market where there's no value in things or there's no collectability, the more the more it's going to be fun and enjoyable. Yeah. I think part of it sucks it going up and down. Like, because it's stressful,
it's been interesting.
It's stressful when you make money because it's like, well, should I sell this thing I like now? You know what I mean? Like there's a, part of investing and, as a stock investor, like the mental health of it, dealing with the ups and downs and knowing when do I sell, when do I buy? And there's never an optimal time. And here's one of the secrets, right? And any investor can tell you this. You either didn't buy enough or you bought too much. There's never you did the right thing.
Yeah,
so if something goes up, it's like, why didn't I buy more? And I heard that from so many Pokemon people who became millionaires overnight this year. One of the things they said is, oh, I could have bought even more. Or I have, like these types of things. It's like, it's this amazing, but and it isn't a criticism. It's just human. This is how our brains work. It's human psychology, just to be aware of like, it's it's part of why being an investor and making money is never going to satisfy you, because there's always I could have bought more, I could have seen an even higher margin. And it's why those types of people who, if that's the only thing pushing them in a market like this and not connection or collecting or enjoyment of the cards, it's why it creates that chaos and that sort of like up and down and highly emotional price movements and, big changes in narrative from like, I love this stuff to I hate this stuff to I love this stuff to I hate this stuff.
Yeah. The emotionality. Yeah. Which also creates huge opportunity relative to very stable things. The overselling, the overshooting is what I look for when I'm looking at investing or trading in stocks too. There's a pattern that I use in stocks every time to look for a bottom. And it doesn't always work, but it works more often than it doesn't work. And the pattern is you have like a downtrend, downtrend. And then at some point at the bottom, you get a blowout, right? And then you get an overcorrection. So like if this is your trend, you're kind of going ding, 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 ding. And then you blow out below the trend line and you come back up higher. And then you make a higher low. And I look for the same thing in card games like Metazoo that are moving quickly. And you just wait and you see this downtrend, boxes are just kind of trending down. And then you see some dump. And then you at least have to kind of open your eyes and wonder, okay, could this be it? And it's not necessarily, not unless you see a big buy up. Metazoo did that in September with Cryptid Nation. It was like,
I've tracked the prices from the beginning. I've been well aware.
Yeah. It had a blowout below like around $400, and there was like a quick dip into the 300s or 350, and then it immediately within a couple of days was like zoop, came back up as people bought hundreds of boxes. And then you see that and you go, oh, we just flushed the system of all the fear, and now the greed's coming in. And I don't know,
it's flushed the system of fear, but you've also triggered all of the people who only buy when things are high. So it's sort of like, and it seems impossible to ever get out of a cycle like that. Cause it's like, like the same guys that are complaining about and aren't buying Nightfall at $200 a box. If tomorrow it goes to 300, they're all going to buy 100%.
Yeah.
Because they're all getting, and the rationality is going to be, well, this shows that it's a really good product because now people are buying it out and I'm going to jump and ride it up to 500. Now, will they actually sell at 500? Some of them might, and those people are called momentum investors, and they're successful and they know what they're doing.
Right.
Others just get greedier and greedier as it goes up more, and they hold it more and more and more. Then it starts to go down. Then they, all those the same types sell. So if we are describing you, understand that like that's extremely normal. And you might want to read a book on value investing and learn how to kind of maybe control those emotions and have a different sort of plan and trajectory and a way of assessing value that is not tied to what other people are doing at the moment, but is more tied to the fundamentals of an item,
Warren Buffett famously always says, buy when there's blood in the street. But I would just add the caveat, buy the
Very
right
nice Midwestern man quote right there.
Yeah, Midwestern man quote. The best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets, And if you are buying the right thing, that's a great idea. Obviously, if you're buying the wrong thing, it's a terrible idea.
Sure.
So that's where the value investing comes in, knowing your plan and knowing what you're buying. But that can be when everyone's afraid and there's bodies on the floor, can be a very good time to buy if you've been waiting and watching and you have a good plan.
There's another famous concept of this can't go any lower or
can't it?
If I put $10,000 into a $1 thing, or I put $10,000 into a $10 thing, people think, oh, like at the $1, how could I lose money? Well, it goes to zero. You lose the exact same as if the $10 goes to zero. It's you just own more of the thing that was at $1 to zero. So there are all sorts of fallacies, logical, psychological mistakes that people make in investing. And it goes back to that expected value old scratch thing we talked about too, where people overspend on something like that, or think it's part of why I think a lot of these pack channels and break channels have done really well, is because people chased the PSA 10 or chased the and how much grading helped that, chased that humongous return, and were unable to calculate the amount of money they were actually losing over time on expected value, or were able to easily kind of rationalize out of that. You see the same types of irrationality and in that downswing on the bullish people say this couldn't possibly go lower, and the bearish people say are like the most skeptical people in the world. You're going to see a lot of conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories tend to come out of the woodwork when things go down. You see a lot of when things go up, but you see the bearish people get into conspiracy theories, and the bullish people, get kind of crazy about how, nothing can go down, et cetera. Sorry, what were you going to say, Argos?
No, just that. You're exactly right. Just the bearish people come out and say, well, of course, night falls down to $200. It's only worth 100, and the bulls are sitting there going, what's happening? Is it dying? Why did you? We had a guy in the Discord today. It's a market Discord who was actually asking, where is everyone? What is there a new one? Is there a new Kickstarter? What's happening? Why has everyone left Metazoo? We're like, dude, it's only been 2 days. Just calm down. Nothing's changed in 2 days.
We'll see. I think I don't play this sort of okay, there are 33 booster boxes on TCG Player right now, and these three stores are like big stores, and I know that they have an automated system that lowers their price every week. I know people who play these types of games where they're very aware of the specific stores, of how they lower their prices week in and week out, and they try to make $5-10 on these buy lists, on these types of things. And I'm not hating on that, but there's that sort of thing driving up and down the market. It's a little bit similar to the stock market in day traders who don't actually know anything about the companies, but follow the movement and the selling movement and everything, and it's just not how, I think I've been successful over time and will be successful over time because I'm looking for fundamentals that help that have a reality to them despite what other people think in the moment. with the Warren Buffett concept and idea and Ben Graham concept that the market is irrational right now, and it will move towards rationality. It will realize these things, and it will overcorrect one way or the other. Over time, I'm going to be that center force that's slowly buying the good stuff, and I'm less concerned about the $5-10, quick sort of thing, unless I need that cash to fund more purchases. I think when you're doing a lot of flipping and day trading and arbitrage, it can be very successful if you don't have a lot of startup cash, but it can also be very risky. And there are people who are so good at it and who have been doing it for such a long time. So you're also competing against, a lot of others. So
sharks, you can make a lot of money and lose a lot of money real fast.
Yeah.
Doing that stuff. I like cards because they're a little bit slower. Usually, though lately it's been crazy. Usually it's like a slow moving market. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm looking at a longer time horizon. Specifically with Metazoo, I guess I've adopted, in my opinion, that the guy running the helm, that Mike, everyone will say this with a new product. That's the thing. Everyone will say, I'm the next thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be here forever. And so you really do have to be critical and look at this and say, do they mean it? Is it real? Who is this person? Is it all garbage? Is it fake? I mean, that's why people are skeptical, because they've heard it all before and they've heard it 100 times. And I guess what sold me was I liked Metazoo, but it was Mike that sold me 100%, because you can have a wonderful thing with the wrong captain. They'll burn it to the ground. And it was really only after watching interview after interview after interview and chatting with him over time that I came to, and it is still, you still have to adopt the apocalyptic possible scenario that there's always the possibility that it doesn't go the way you plan, that it doesn't go the way you think. But what I think at the moment, at least, is that Mike's in it for his career. And that for the extent of his career, this is what he will do because this is his passion. And that he's a smart guy and that he's an obsessive guy. And I understand that because I am at times an obsessive person. And I recognize obsessive personalities that when they dive into something, they really dive in. And I'm telling you, Mike is an intelligent, obsessive person. And this is his baby. And this is what he's going to do. That is how I feel anyway. And because of that, I am able to at least look at this the way I want to look at it, which is a longer term thing. And a lot of this short-term stuff is just, is it a buying opportunity? Does it mean anything? Or is it just the erratic nature of a brand new hot thing with all the FOMO and all the fear and greed? And then I get to sit back with my personal investments and my stuff and just kind of know that the short term doesn't matter, because longer term things will be looking up.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like, how do you identify the things that matter and tune out the things that don't? And that's the struggle of like a value investor, whether it's Metazoo, which is, investing in Metazoo. I don't know. Like, I'll just be completely honest with you. Like, at this point, like, I think enjoying it.
Enjoying it's the way to go. I wouldn't advise anyone to consider it. I even have trouble calling any collectible an investment just because it doesn't have earnings, but it's an alternative investment. It's like a different kind of thing, but certainly, if you're buying Metazoo, I mean, do it because you like it. If you don't like it, you shouldn't be there buying a lot of it,
Yeah, I think that I mean, I think, as far as like investing in Metazoo and the idea of speculating on Metazoo, I think buying up a bunch of like Kickstarter reverse hollows, and like to be honest, there's all sorts of irrationality in the market right now. Like, if you're really serious and really believed in it, you could take one look and be like, these are all the underpriced cards because the pop reports are super low. The promos are selling for way more than they should. And some of
them.
And some of the Kickstarter set cards are selling for way less than they should. The Kickstarter set cards are actually more important than the promos, and there are about the same or less of them than some promos, for example. So there's a lot of stuff that it's a brand new market, and it goes to this comps, like stuff doesn't make sense. Now, what happens to Metazoo in the long run? I don't know the answer to that. As far as Mike, I've really enjoyed talking with Mike. I think he's really passionate. He's definitely obsessed with his product, and we'll constantly bring it back. We're talking about something else or another card game. He's like, "Oh, maybe that'll be good for Metazoo, or we could do Metazoo or these types of things." I think
he loves it. Yeah, I love that about it. Yeah,
definitely. I see aspects of myself or you or other people in him in terms of just like he thinks about it all the time. Clearly, he's definitely a CEO type in the sense that he's a big picture personality. He's thinking, he's brainstorming, networking, making connections, thinking about the direction. Companies are built of CEO types and then people, logistics types and people who have both skills and some combination and all sorts of things. And it'll be interesting to see how all of that, builds out over time. I think if the concept is well executed, it'll probably succeed. I think there's probably room for a big sort of collecting, playable, cryptid type game in the world. That I think would have mass popularity, and mass interest. But will it achieve that? We're far too early, I think, to have a sense of that. But for you, a lot of it is just kind of believing in Mike or believing in his sort of he'll make it happen, determination.
Yeah, a lot of it. I mean, I love the theme of it, and I love the game, and I love the look of the product. I like it a lot. And that's probably half of it. Because if you had a great person running some crappy product, I also wouldn't buy in. It is also because I believe that the product has enormous potential as a brand, because it is so resonant. Like we talked about, Pokemon sells more Pokemon stuffed animals, right? Or Pokemon whatever than Pokemon card games. And it's because the population of people who buy plushies is just larger than the population of people who play cards or whatever, And that's just an example. I don't know that specific example to be true, but the idea is, why does I feel that Metazoo, a lot of people are into Flesh and Blood, and I like Flesh and Blood too. I play Flesh and Blood, it's fun. But I feel that Metazoo personally has vastly more potential than Flesh and Blood, just like Pokemon does, because the kind of people who there's a smaller body of people who like really deep fantasy. And I love that. There's nothing wrong with that. I love it. But the fact is, there's a much smaller body of people who are willing to dive into super deep fantasy than there are who are just willing to have fun with random modern day stuff. Just random people, the kind of people that would look at Mothman and go, cool. There's more of those people. And you see that with Harry Potter. Why did Harry Potter succeed? Part of it, in my opinion, was they took an amazing idea and they made it incredibly accessible. They took deep fantasy concepts and they made it fun and light and modern day. And all of a sudden, all of these people that previously saw deep, Tolkien fantasy as inaccessible, found it incredibly accessible. And to me, in large part, that is Metazoo. You're taking all these cryptids and all this history and folklore and stuff that people had kind of heard of but not dove into, and you're just making it so light and fun with simple artwork and sparkles and fun mechanics and just fun,
I think the art design, generally speaking, and the holo is a home run for me, me subjectively. And other people obviously just, some people disagree, but that's how I feel. When we compare this to Harry Potter or Pokemon, what comes through my head is Harry Potter was a huge hit because we all wanted to be at Hogwarts and be wizards. That is
the story was good.
that is the core of it. Like, I wanted to have magical powers and be there at Hogwarts. Like, I didn't really want to be in the main gang and have to go through all like the bad stuff. I could have skipped that, but just like be one of the dudes at Hogwarts and just more of like a normal Hogwarts experience. Like that would have been sweet.
You want the smooth ride.
I want the smooth ride. I'm not interested in like the heroics. I just want to like have magical powers and like, just have like a more normal high school experience just with magical powers. But
it's a good story,
and then Pokemon, you're walking around in the world and you're catching like wild animals that you're developing friends with, and then you can fight with them against other teams. Like it's such an ingenious, and then so gotta catch them all. So simple, but so it has the collection element is in the game. You're collecting the different species, the different types, and then you have this Pokédex you're trying to complete, and then you have like rarer, shiny variations that are hard to find, that are hard to collect. And then you have, the game element where you're trying to win and the, role playing RPG, building up your levels element. Like it incorporates all of this, but seamlessly in a concept and an idea. I don't see any of that in Metazoo yet, but I'm not an expert on Metazoo, but it's like, I don't see that thing outside of the cryptid stuff. That's like, this
for its like, thing,
that this is like not necessarily even, but just like, but I haven't read the comic books, to be fair. I don't know the story so well yet, and I probably should. I probably should delve in, immerse myself more. So maybe I shouldn't. It's unfair for me to comment on this before I know more of that. But for me, my relationship is I know a number of the cryptids. And I have relationships with the stories of those cryptids through other things and through movies I've watched about Jack Frost or about, right. Rather than the actual Metazoo story that they're going to tell with these things that I feel connected to. So, for me, probably, and those who don't know, can you like tell us a little bit? You want to tell us a little bit of like the idea of it and the story?
Sure.
I'd love to.
Real quick, right before that, one little thing on Harry Potter.
Yes.
We all wanted to go to Hogwarts, right? But what's funny is the idea of a magic academy is not new. You have probably 50 Dungeons and Dragons books and you have so many deep fantasy ideas of a magic academy that have been around for decades. And none of them became a multi-billion-dollar franchise, by itself. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what I mean when I say you take something that is awesome and you make it incredibly accessible, and that's how it takes off. And it is in the simplicity and the casualness of the approach that makes it massively appealing to a massive audience. And so someone somewhere, J.K. Rowling. People casting spells and learning spells and going to school to learn magic, that's not a new idea. She just made it casual and easy, so easy to relate to.
Beautiful books, the storytelling, the character development, the simplicity. You're 100% right.
Cars are breaking down. It's modern day stuff. Everyone relates to it. It resonates. It's simple. It's digestible. You know who told me about Harry Potter?
Yeah.
My 90-year-old grandma asked me if I'd ever read Harry Potter. And I was like, no. And this was years ago. And she says, look, it's been on the cover of Time magazine twice. So I thought I should read it before I die. And I like it. And she's like, you should read it. I was like, wow. So I did. And I loved it. And I thought, my 90-year-old grandma loves it. I love it. Kids love it. Wow, what a broadly appealing thing. So I'm not saying Metazoo can do that, but the idea is they're trying.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see if they can pull it off. So the story of Metazoo.
Sure. Can I say one quick thing before? So what that makes me think of, and this could be wrong, and it's kind of like your grandmother concept almost says the opposite of what I'm going to say. But I like in my mind, I part of why I think Harry Potter was so successful is also timing. And it was timing with the kids of that generation, because I had never read about a magical academy in anything else. Like there was nothing in my world that was Magical Academy. So for me, that was the first ever Magical Academy, magic in a book, magical story that I had ever read. For me, it was sort of like that. It was, what was it? Like Narnia, the Narnia kind of books and story. A little bit later, I loved Ender's Game and like some sci-fi, but like
Ender's Game is so good.
Yeah. What's amazing is sort of like, and then you have things like Star Wars, right? That was the previous generation, but then we loved it too as kids and it kind of passed on. And, there are these great stories that pass on and have these elements. So I guess I guess one thing is that was definitely part of my amazement and connection with Harry Potter. But to that second point, Harry Potter is like a Star Wars because it didn't just appeal to that one thing. There's something so magical about it that it can like be repeated and like next generations can get into it. And there's something my dad would say is like timeless when he talks a lot about theater. Like there's theater or plays that were written 50, 60 years ago that you watch today and it feels very outdated. And then there are things that you watch where even if the language is a little outdated, there's like a timeless theme to it that just like resonates just as much and probably in the same way to the human beings that are watching it today as human beings that were watching it 70 years ago, even though the world is so different, and that's the type of stuff. And that's why I think like Greek mythology or like these mythological characters and stories, to kind of make some of the pro Metazoo argument, it's like, has some of that. There's reasons why these things have been around for thousands of years. These heroic tales and stories and themes have been in literature and, but sorry. Okay. Metazoo story.
Okay. So the story opens in essentially close to the modern day. So that's where the world of Metazoo is now, right? And it opens on a couple of younger kids. I think they're like 8 years old or something like that, 9 years old. And they're playing Little League baseball. And it basically says, hey, here's two kids. They're like normal kids, but they've noticed they have a little bit more intuition. Like sometimes they can almost feel like they kind of know that something might happen before it's going to happen, but it's not a big deal, but it sure helps them in baseball, right? Or helps them in different random things. And so they're out playing this baseball game. And then essentially it's all peaceful and happy or whatever. And there is a cataclysm, like a cataclysmic event where they, the way it presents in the story is there's just like fire in the sky and there's chaos. There's a huge explosion, the sound of an explosion, like people are hitting the ground, covering their ears. And when these people start looking around, there's people are dead. There's monster, people are changing, there's some huge worldwide cataclysmic event has happened. And then the story then moves forward. It does like a time shift ahead and it talks about these kids growing up and what happened. Essentially, there's this veil in the world that has, for more than 1,000 or so, for thousands of years, has separated the magical world from the real world. And through this veil, there are like thin areas. And in those thinner areas of the veil, that's where people sometimes catch a glimpse of things beyond the veil. And that is when people will see hints of Bigfoot, hints of Mothman, shadow people, little things that have given rise to all the folklore that we're aware of now in the modern era. And that is why the stories never go away, because they're still there. They're just hidden behind this veil, and you're catching little glimpses of it here and there. The veil also locked away magic and like magical artifacts, stuff like that. And so the veil in some areas had been weakening, and Indrid Cold is the villain of Metazoo, right? At least at the moment. And he had this plan engineered to shatter the veil. And so the cataclysmic event that ended up, I think, killing off like 10% of the world population in Metazoo. So it's not like, there's some adult themes in Metazoo, which is kind of interesting. That's the darker side of the Metazoo storyline. When Indrid Cold shatters the veil, suddenly these two worlds are slammed together. And then when the Metazoo story finally then really starts to carry forward is when they've stopped catching up with all that stuff, and you enter the modern Metazoo world, which is years after this apocalypse has happened. The two main characters, Sam Sinclair and Adam Ackler, have been growing up with this like custodial parent, because both of their parents were killed in the shattering of the veil. And cities have had to reform in a world full of cryptids. And so they've opened, and magic is back. So they've opened new schools, they've changed curriculums, there's walls around cities. They are teaching about cryptids and learning about spells, and jobs have changed. Everything is different now. And you're just trying to explore and learn this new world. And you've got these kids that are near the end of high school. They're like, I think they're like 17, 18, something like that. And they're getting ready to go to college. And they're just trying to figure out their places in the world. And they have different aptitudes and different strengths. And this is only 2 chapters in. So we're still trying to see where it goes from here. But it's definitely setting the stage for a unique world in Metazoo with its own unique struggles and its unique kind of culture. And it sets the stage for people that are young adults that are kind of coming into their own and growing up in some adversity. And then one of them is becoming more of a caster and one of them is more rebellious. And it's going to be really interesting to see where they take it. I feel like it's a great introduction, but I am very excited. I'm eager to read the 3rd chapter and see like how they can carry it, and the 4th and the 5th and the 6th. I really want to know where they're going to take this. But I love the adult themes where they're not afraid to show some tragedy. They're not afraid to do that. You have some key moments. The end of the 2nd chapter ends with this dramatic scene of the main character, Sam Sinclair's custodial parent, basically, who raised him for the last 10 years, like comes in to save him from this battle scene at midnight where he's confronted by Mothman, and Mothman is basically about to ace Sam Sinclair. M comes in to hold him off and sacrifices himself to save Sam, pushes him through this portal. Sam's falling into the darkness. He's hearing screams or shouts, blah, 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 blah. Boom. Cliffhanger. And you're just like, oh, they actually have a storyline. Crap. When does chapter 3 come out? And it's gonna be interesting. They are not holding back. They're definitely developing the storyline, but they have a long way to go. We'll see.
Yeah.
Metazoo. Da, 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 da.
Yeah. No, I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I definitely would if I saw that as a description on a Netflix video, I'd click, I'd give it a chance, I'd watch it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It has a lot of themes I like in things. So yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, I would like to. Maybe I'll pick up some of those comics if I can. Or
they have it on Kindle, yeah. I think
on a Kindle. Okay.
The first edition's on Kindle from Amazon, and then I think the 2nd edition comic is still on Amazon for like a normal price, or the 2nd chapter. I mean. I think so, like $10 or something, $15, something like that. They're fun too. They have like little advertisements and stuff, like Minnesota, and it's like a Minnesota Iceman cryptid holding like an ice cold beverage, and he's like, "Hey, it's cute."
So I do need to wrap up soonish. I'm just seeing. Because I am actually on call to do a couple of things tonight for my separate job.
We've gone for a while.
But I would love to, if anyone has like a last minute question, I can take a look here. I'm sorry that we ignored the chat the whole time. That's a good sign though of a good conversation. No, it was great having you on. I really like your channel. I like how you do things. I think that you're like very professional about it and super engaged. And I can see that you're, passionate in building something like sustainable and giving. I think you care a lot about the people that you're interacting with over there. It's why I like invited you on nice. Because I appreciate what you're doing. And yeah, I hope it's like successful for you and Metazoo does well. And I also, I know that if it doesn't, for you, you'll keep, yeah, exactly. Doing this with other sorts of things. So But hopefully it is for a long time. And I also look forward to, having Mike on again and continue to talk about this. I mean, the main reason why I do, so I'm in like tons of different TCGs and CCGs that I collect, but the reason I've had Metazoo on quite a bit is because I'm very interested in Metazoo. I'm very interested. It does have a lot of similarities and feelings to Pokemon. I also think what's happening is just fascinating, with it.
It's been very interesting.
So it's why I like to keep talking about it. And, I'm sure some people here are going to be like annoyed but it's my channel. I'm going to do what I want to do. No,
well, thank you so much for having me on. This was great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. You have a nice level channel, especially for finance channel. I've always found you approach things from a very reasonable perspective, and you advise caution and safety, which is it's a refreshing thing to see in TCGs. So I looked forward to coming on. I had a great time. Thanks for that.
I definitely come from like a cautious, very like caring, careful approach to these types of markets and to these types of things. And I'm a long-termer, so that like it, for me, there isn't that, as we talk today, I'm always kind of instinctively against the sort of the hype and the drama, and not necessarily that I think it's like all bad, but more that it's not what actually sustains enjoyment in something, or a hobby in the long. So
it can draw in a lot of attention short term, but it definitely isn't the sustaining factor.
So thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. I'm sure we'll stay in touch. I joined your Patreon, so I'll be checking in there.
I saw that
from time and see what you got going on. And
we have a lot going. We have a very active Patreon.
Any last minute like thing you want to say, plug, all that sort of stuff?
Oh, shameless plug. Yeah. When I run, and I know everyone, it's just my opinion on things, but when I do try to cover Metazoo news and updates, it is very important to me that I'm trying to be as accurate as possible. And that's one of the ways that it is still, some of it is just my opinion, but if you are looking for someone who talks about the ups and downs of Metazoo, I do that, and I do it every day. And I will say when something looks like a bad idea, or when all the reverse hollows are in the spellbooks, or when Nightfall has gone down 50%. And I'll say if I think something a good idea. It's still just my opinion, but I really do care about the community. That's more important to me. I don't need clicks for success. I don't need the $6 I earn from YouTube. So for me, integrity and accuracy and the community is what matters. And so if you're interested at all in Metazoo and you want to hear these updates as they happen, I am around. Feel free to stop by. You can thumbs me down if you don't like Metazoo. Come on by. I am the channel to click down if you want to. But if you like it and you're interested, come by too, and we're there for you, and we'll keep you up to date. So,
well, I think you're passionate and knowledgeable about it, and say really useful things, and put a lot of effort in trying to say useful things for people. So I think that's the most you can ask out of any content creator, so I think it's why I had you on, and subscribe to your Patreon. And I definitely, if you're interested in Metazoo, I think it's worth supporting this guy for sure. All right, man.
Thanks, Jake.
You're very welcome. Hopefully we'll, have you on again at some time, or we'll have another conversation, and take good care. All right.
All right. Thanks. You too, man. We'll see.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, everyone for watching.
Yeah.